I am joined now by Tor Staubo and Johnny JT Tomlinson. The guys run the boat Gasse, Superboat Extreme, Superboat Unlimited with unlimited horsepower. But Johnny, you've chosen to go with the Mercury 1350s. Why that power package?
We decided last year when we started to go with that power package. It makes good power and it's good reliable power. We're able to get several events out of one set of engines, which we haven't been able to do in the past. And mainly for the just longevity and the maintenance we get at Mercury and the performance of them and how they run. We've elected to go with that power, and it's been working out good.
Gasse, but they're being passed right now by twins. No, they're side by side. Gasse just gassed it. Look at this side by side drag race. Gasse and WHM trying to make it first to the first turn, and the simplified turbine boat in third place. Gasse with the inside lane here. They must maintain their lane. These catamarans do tend to swing out. Oh my goodness, they just touched. Comparison speaking, are you more of a turbocharger man that these are, or supercharger man?
These boats throttle a little differently. There's some things to get used to versus the supercharged engine. I do like the way the supercharged engine responds and how it reacts, and you know, this one's just a little bit different, but I do like it.
We are doing a lot of nostalgia here for the Key West magazine, so let me take you back to your roots, where it all began for you. You're known amongst the offshore powerboat racing circles as probably the best throttle man in the world, but how did it get started for JT?
Well, it was a long time ago. There's several good guys out there and guys that I followed and looked up to when I was a kid. And, you know, I grew up on or around the water in Miami, and the boats were my trade, and as a mechanic was my trade. So I've been actively racing since the mid to late 80s with several different teams, and predominantly most in the last, 10, 12 years was all the Bud Light and Bacardi Silver teams for Dave Scott, and all the Drambuie on Ice teams for Gary Montano, Forrest Barber, and several different boats, and even before that with Laith Ferron and Zero Defect, and then racing overseas with Laith. So been doing it a long time, been very fortunate to do that. It's been our trade, it's been our business, what we do back at the TNT Custom Marine, and it's kept me involved and allowed me to chase a dream since I was a little kid, and seeing these boats go out the ocean, the old cigarettes, running the old ocean races that we don't do anymore, but that's what I grew up watching as a kid and reading all the magazines, and just really fell in love with it and took that on as a trade and was able to turn it into this, which I've been very fortunate to do.
Tor, now you haven't been boat racing that long, but you've been racing for a long time, and I understand they call you Mr. Go-Kart. You are our terror on the go-kart track.
Well, I don't know about that, but I've been racing kind of, well, from very early days. So I was brought up with looking on these race boats, as well as Johnny says, and it was always my dream of getting that possibility. But I started out with racing with go-karts, and then it became back home in Norway to like 20-foot hulls, monobottom with a 150 horsepower outboard, and then it has grown on that.
And now you're at the very top of the food chain in Superboat Unlimited. I mean, this MTI you've got, which is only like one of two you bought, I think, or two or three, but you must really love the sport because you keep getting more and more involved in it with each and every race.
Yeah, it's strange about this. It's really good fun, and I do car racing back home in Europe, but this is really much. It's more cool. It's more drama, and it's more teamwork. It's just great fun. So this is beautiful, and the whole family around it. It's nice. So I love it. Yeah.
Let's talk about racing venues, Johnny. Superboat International races on some lakes, and here in New York, for instance, this week we're going on a river, although it's a very, very rough river. Also the Great Lakes and also the ocean. Compare the different venues and the water types, because you've done it all.
Yeah, I've raced over the years in lakes and oceans and ponds and rivers, and predominantly the SBI races are we run in the ocean, and we're running the lakes that are rough, and we like that. It puts more of the offshore back into offshore racing. But we have run races, long. When I started racing, we were running 18 and 20 mile laps in the ocean. They've shortened those up for safety reasons, for personnel, for volunteers, for rescue, and to make it more of a spectator sport. So then we started running a lot of lakes and a lot of rivers, and running constantly a lot of flat water races over the years, especially 8-10 years ago. That's all we were doing was running different lakes, and we weren't getting in the ocean. And now we're back SBI races running in the ocean, and it puts a lot more emphasis on the crew and the equipment. It's harder to finish those rough water races that are beating the boat up and beating the equipment up, and it really just puts an overall emphasis more on the team as far as getting everything right and getting everything perfect, because sometimes we run some of these rough water races and I tell my guys back at the shop, you know, I wish I could put you in the boats some of the times we're in the rough water, because I'm amazed they come back to the dock at times in one piece, because it does get bumpy, it does get nasty, and you take big shots, and you really can't see that on TV or film, but if you're in the boats, you really feel it and see the abuse that they go through. So it's really a testament to the equipment and everything on how they hold up in these rough water races versus the calm water races. Although the calm water races, you get the higher speeds, the flat water, and those are exciting also.
Well, speaking of rough races, you mentioned like the old days, the big cigarettes, the Apache, the 47-foot Apaches go out in 6 to 8 foot seas. But at our last race in Michigan City, Indiana, on Lake Michigan, we had 35-mile-per-hour winds, and we had 8 to 12s, and it was the first race in 500 races that SBI President John Carbonell actually canceled the race. First time he's ever canceled, because it was actually too rough to get out there.
And you wouldn't have believed it standing on the beach. You know, we went out the day before and it was relatively calm. We were running some really fast speeds, and the wind changed directions the next day and it started blowing the other way, and it roughed up the lake, and it looked bumpy from the shore. We never went out that day, but I was questioning, is it really that rough out there? But then later in the day, I talked to some locals who were out in boats, and I talked to one guy who had a 30-foot boat. He was a local there, and he had told me, he says, I have not seen it this rough in a really, really long time. He said there's 10-foot holes out there, so you just couldn't tell from the beach, but it was rough.
Speaking of rough water, the European races that are known to race pretty rough water over there. How are the water conditions where you're from, Tor, in Oslo, Norway?
Well, I'm used to more rough than this, actually. So when we were, as I told you earlier, with the monohulls on the west coast or south coast of Norway, with other words on the Northern Sea, I mean, 9-footers, 10 it's what you are used to. So when we have a race from the south coast of Norway over to Denmark, it's 15 feet or whatever. It's just to go slower.
Now, let me ask you about your new boat, because it's also an MTI, but tell us, Johnny, just the differences between the boat you have here and for the New York race and the other 48-foot MTI that Tor just purchased.
Yes, they're both 48 MTIs, both running Mercury 1350s. This boat's a little bit different. It has a 4-man cockpit. That boat's a 2-man cockpit. That boat, the drive system is a BPM surface drive with a single rudder off the back, which, you know, in most race conditions may be a little bit better boat for us. This boat has the stern drives, which work very well also and run very fast speeds. But those are the main differences in the boat. There was talks of us possibly running a 2-boat team, and Tor wanted to be able to get a backup boat in case we decide to do that. And there is times when you need the backup boat, so that's what we have, and that's what we'll be bringing to Key West, both boats. But they are very similar when you look at them. A few things about them quite different.
Now, Tor, you mentioned you raced the mono hulls originally, but you've got the catamarans now. Which do you prefer and why?
Well, it's of course this is the big thing, the what all boys dream about, and it is. I mean, it's wild, it's dramatic, it's good fun. But to drive the smaller boats, it's just as dramatic. So get onto it, boys.
These big boats, so what the crowds seem to love. They love to see the high speeds and stuff. Speaking of high speeds, let's just talk for a second about these shootouts that they're having now, where the boats try to go as fast as they possibly can in a certain measured distance. What do you think about that kind of situation?
Well, it looks like doing that twice a year, once out in Lake Havasu. It all started out in Lake of the Ozarks. I did that shootout for Dave Scott about 12 or 13 years in a row in several different boats, and was able to win Top Gun several years. And then when the turbines came along, they started going speeds faster than we were in the piston power. But it's a 1-mile run. You start at about a 40-mile-an-hour start, and then you run for 1 mile, and they measure your speed as you finish the mile. And you know, the fastest we went through there in a piston power boat was 208 on the radar gun, but 218 on the GPS. And that was a specially built engine and boat for Dave Scott that he wanted to win that. That's his neck of the woods there. And they were engines producing probably 2,000 horsepower each. But they're great events. They bring a lot of people from jet skis to race boats to poker run boats.
Pontoons.
Pontoons run through it. Tor and I went through the shootout last year in this boat here, and with our Merc 1350s, I think we went through there 172 or 173, and that was first time in the boat, and that was a pretty good run for a boat with 1350s. Other boats with 1600 horse weren't even running that fast, and some were running a little quicker. So they're cool events. They surround them with poker runs and parties and things like that, and you know, at some point in time, the speeds may be going a little bit too quick, where they may need to just shorten the course or something, but we'll see.
And then finally, one last thing, your list of accolades is so long, but you just set another record, I believe, with Stuart Hyam, who used to race with us for many years, going around Long Island.
Yeah, Stuart was a long-time offshore racer and retired from that years ago, and that was in a 42 MTI with Mercury 1350s that MTI put together that we rigged at TNT for Stuart, especially for that run. And he established the record in 1989, and I believe Joe Scrow beat it last year, another SBI racer. He beat it by like 1 minute last year, so that got up Stuart, and Stuart says, I got to get my record back. So we did it about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it was a great day, perfect weather, and we were able to, you know, run the boat hard but safe, and do the run in 2 hours and 11 minutes, about 270 miles, and everything came together great that day. So yeah, that was a fun run. It was fun to run some distance like that and pace yourself, but have to run fast and establish that record. That was a lot of fun.
Speaking of fun, these guys are always fun. The boat is called Gasse, which I think Norwegian for goose it or Gasse it. Put that foot, put the pedal to the metal, put those throttle sticks all the way forward. And when you're speaking of throttling,
Your skydive team.
Skydive team?
Okay, yeah, well, I did skydiving a few years ago, and we were like a 4-way team. So that's from really the name came from, because we started out with well, like beginners do. You don't know how to do it, and we are 5 people in total, the video guy and the 4 people doing the formation, and we were flying like gooses. They don't fly too well, so that's really where the name come from. And I carried on the other stuff for later. So it's a double meaning, you know. It's a goose hit or metal to the pedal, pedal to the metal, or whatever. Yeah.
Well, there you go. They got the big goose up here, number 8. The team is called Gasse Superboat Unlimited. Look for them here in New York. Look for them at Clearwater, and then the finals, the World Championships in Key West. This is a team to watch.